More than 7,000 islands are in the Caribbean Sea. Many are tiny uninhabited specks of rock. The ones that aren't form 28 nations. Some of those nations have large footprints, like the Bahamas, which has 30 inhabited islands and more than 600 uninhabited ones. And some, like the nation we're focused on today on the Vacay Network Travel Podcast, are small dots of paradise. The island of St. Kitts is about the size of Staten Island. Its sister island, Nevis, is about half the size. And it's Nevis that we're talking about today. I'm Adrian Bridge-Massey, travel editor of Vacay.ca and VacayNetwork.com, and joining me is Jim Byers, the senior editor of Travel Pulse Canada. Jim, I just found out it's Nevis, not Nevis, and you've been to this little island. Just really, how small is it?
It's pretty small. It's not tiny, but it's pretty close. It's maybe, as I recall, maybe an hour to go from one end of the island to the other.
That sounds like pretty good. Yeah. If you're into GTA, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, that'll get you from Yonge Street to the 404 on a Friday afternoon. So it's nice. You know, it's a really low key. I hate to keep using the word throwback, but it is kind of a throwback kind of place. That's you know, you want to call it kinder or gentler, I don't know, but it's a pretty small, low key, very friendly kind of island that just feels a little bit like the Caribbean must have felt like in the 50s or early 60s before, you know, mass tourism came along.
And another thing about a place like Nevis is because it's a little bit unknown, it's going to have a lot of surprises for the folks who visit there. A lot of these things that make you say, hey, I didn't know that makes it a terrific destination for Tripsy, which is the sponsor of our podcast, and the new travel trivia app is coming out. Nevis is one of the partners. Players will answer questions and earn rewards on airfare, hotel, restaurants, and activities. And more than that, you're gaining knowledge on this little place like Nevis, and it has a reason to be in the spotlight thanks to this Broadway connection that's become a global phenomenon, really.
Alexander Hamilton, yeah, very famous political figure in United States history, and born and raised on Nevis. You know, not a well-to-do person. I think the family was relatively poor, and you know, it's not one of these born with a silver spoon in his mouth sort of stories. I think he spent the first 7 or 8, 9 years of his life in Nevis. There are differing accounts as to what year he was born, records being what they were back in the day, and Google searches not existing yet, so they're a little fuzzy on the history, but he did spend, I think, 7 or 9 years there, and I think ended up in St. Croix and then ended up in the mainland United States. So I've read that, you know, in the past there have been, you know, special hotel deals. There's a little museum that I saw when I was there a few years ago, all about Alexander Hamilton. So yeah, people who like Broadway and theater culture and American history in general are going to find some pretty cool surprises.
Yeah, I think so. And the Broadway play, I haven't seen it. I'm not sure if you have. It glosses over the Nevis part of his life. But just a fascinating story. He ended up at a place called King's College, which in Manhattan, which then became Columbia University. And for a founder of the nation, he's actually buried in Lower Manhattan, next to a shoe store in the Trinity.
I did it that little old church in just off of Wall Street. Yep.
Yeah, at the Grace Cathedral. So yeah, I've been there too. You couldn't believe that Alexander Hamilton is buried there. But when you go to Nevis, you can, as you mentioned, find out where he was born, and you'll also learn he's not the only historic figure with a big impact on this little place.
Yeah, I mean, Admiral Horatio Nelson from the British. Famous British admiral and military figure, married a woman from Nevis named Fanny Nisbet, and
they were married in Nevis as well.
Yeah, and they met there. I think she was a widower, and they met at a party, as I recall. So I'm sure tongues were wagging at the party over Miss Nisbet and Mr. Nelson. They did end up getting married, and I don't think the marriage worked out. I think, sadly enough, it didn't last. And then, of course, Nelson met his fate later on. But yeah, there's a small museum in Nevis where you can go and hear about Horatio Nelson and his exploits. And you know, it's pretty amazing. You talk about, you know, two of the major figures of their time, in Alexander Hamilton and Lord Horatio Nelson, both having ties to a pretty small little Caribbean island. It's pretty cool.
You're listening to the Vacay Network Travel Podcast, brought to you by Tripsy, the travel trivia app launching in January 2019. in just a couple days, actually. Tripsy has some fabulous prizes, including a VIP experience in Curacao. That includes round-trip airfare for 2, 5-night luxury hotel stay, and $500 cash. Check tripsy.com, that's TRIPPZY.com for details, and when you do, you'll find some deals you can enjoy in Nevis as well. And one of the things that any traveler wants to know is, how do you get to a place? So, Jim, you can fill us in on that. How does someone from New York or Toronto or East Coast of North America get down to this wonderful little island?
It's actually not hard. There's no direct flights. They have a pretty small airport in Nevis, being a relatively tiny small little island there. You can connect through Antigua, I'm told, and also through Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is probably the better option for Americans. Antigua would probably be a better option for a lot of Canadians. Canadians not really being really big on flying into Puerto Rico, seem to go more towards Antigua. So there are ways to get there by plane. When I went, I found this was really fun. I flew Toronto direct to St. Kitts, hopped in a taxi. I'm guessing it was a few years ago, Adrian, it was probably 20 minutes up and over a beautiful hill, over just gorgeous coastline, looking up from the top of a mountain down at I think there was a salt pond, and you can see the Caribbean and the Atlantic Oceans, and you plunge down the hill and pull up to a little beach, and then maybe a 5 or 6 minute ferry ride across from St. Kitts to the north shore of Nevis. And from there, I was about a 3-minute ride to my hotel, which was Nisbet Plantation, which, yes, is named after the Fanny Nisbet family. So for me, it was a pretty easy trick. I think I landed in St. Kitts. Pretty sure I was at my hotel in Nevis about an hour later.
Yeah, that's great. And they've got the island, the waterway that separates Nevis from St. Kitts is called the Narrows. It's only about a 3-mile crossing, and the ferry runs frequently. And there's no trains on Nevis. It's such a small island, as you said. You can just get around with a car very easily.
Or easily, and when I was there, I can't remember the system, but there was like a certain system where there were regular municipal buses, but there were also cars that people had, and you could just hop in with them, and they would take you wherever you wanted to go, and you just gave them a couple of bucks. Oh, it was great. Yeah. Met up with locals, and you sit in the back seat. Hey, man, where are you going? I'm going here for dinner. I'm going to the beach. It was great.
Uber without the app. That's
absolutely no apps. Yeah.
We've mentioned the Horatio Nelson aspect and the Alexander Hamilton aspect. Give us a couple of other things that people can do when they're on Nevis, and I've got a couple that I can mention too.
Sure. Well, I mean, of course, the beaches are great, as we know. There's really, really nice beaches. Wale, I think, was one of them. I think Penny's Beach is the one over on the west side near the Four Seasons, which is a great resort. Of course, not everybody can afford to stay at the Four Seasons, but it's a great place to go and see how the other half lives, if you like, and great food. And you probably know about Sunshine's Bar next door, which is a really great casual restaurant, outdoor bar, home of the Killer Bee, one of the more famous cocktails in the Caribbean.
You've had a few of those?
Disclose how much alcohol goes into it. It's probably more than we need, but it's very, very tasty. I was there. A small monkey scampered up and grabbed the cup when I wasn't drinking it, like a little plastic cup. And I got a picture of him somewhere, and he's like full, just guzzling this rum drink.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, we had some tipsy monkeys, but it was great. And you probably know too about the great hiking there on Nevis as well, Adrian.
Yeah, the Mount or Nevis Peak is the highest spot on the island, and they've got a park all around it, and you can hike trails from the beach all the way to the top of the mountain. Anyone who's seen a photograph of Nevis undoubtedly has seen a shot of the Nevis Peak. It really dominates the island. So a couple of other things. People love food as well. They have a mango festival. There's apparently 40 types of mangoes on the island, and that festival happens every October, and usually they get celebrity chefs involved, and that sounds like a lot of fun.
That's fun, yeah.
Yeah, a good time to go to experience an event like that.
The golf course is terrific too. At the Four Seasons, there's a golf course designed by Robert Trent Jones. I thought it's one of the more beautiful ones I played in the Caribbean.
You've been listening to the Vacay Network Travel Podcast, sponsored by Tripsy. For my co-host Jim Byers, this is Adrian Bridge-Massey. Thanks for listening.